paradox of intimacy is that the person we trust to protect us is often the one with the most power to hurt us. We build relationships on the unspoken promise of safety, the idea that when we are at our weakest, our partner will stand as a shield against the world. But what happens when that shield lowers? What happens when the person supposed to care for you in your most vulnerable moment chooses, instead, to serve their own desires? Today, we are deconstructing a story about the fragility of trust, the blurring of lines under the influence, and the devastating realization that safety is never guaranteed. Let's center our narrative on a young woman, we'll call her Sarah, and her partner, Mark. By all accounts, their relationship was functioning. There was chemistry, history, and the assumption of mutual respect. But assumptions are often tested in chaotic environments. The setting is a party. It is the kind of night designed for escapism, loud music, flowing drinks, and the suspension of daily responsibilities. Both Sarah and Mark indulged heavily. However, alcohol acts differently on everyone. For Sarah, the night took a sharp turn from enjoyment to illness. She reached a state of physical incapacitation, the kind where the room spins and the body shuts down to protect itself. She retreated to the bathroom, the one place she hoped to find privacy and recover. This is the moment where the power dynamic shifts entirely. She is no longer an equal partner. She is a vulnerable individual in need of aid. She is defenseless. And it is in this precise moment that Mark enters the room. Mark entered the bathroom ostensibly to check on her. In a healthy dynamic, this is where the caretaker instinct kicks in, holding hair back, offering water, ensuring safety. But Mark's judgment was clouded, and his inhibitions were stripped away by the alcohol. Instead of offering care, he initiated physical intimacy. It is crucial to understand Sarah's state here. She was physically incapacitated. The ability to articulate a refusal, to push away, or to process what was happening was absent. The tragedy of human biology is that the body can sometimes react to physical stimuli even when the mind is shutting down or terrified. Sarah experienced a physiological response, a fleeting sensation of pleasure, which often confuses victims later. However, her consciousness was barely tethered to reality. She was not a participant. She was a vessel. Midway through, Mark seemed to snap back to reality. The fog lifted just enough for him to realize the gravity of the situation, that he was engaging with someone who was not effectively present. He stopped, but the boundary had already been obliterated. The sanctuary of the locked door had been violated by the one person who had the key. The morning brings the harsh light of sobriety. For Sarah, the physical illness fades, only to be replaced by a profound psychological sickness. As the memories of the previous night crystallize, she is left with a harrowing realization. She had been used while she was helpless. She confronts Mark. To his credit, he does not deny it. He apologizes profusely, expressing deep remorse, claiming that once he realized the error, he stopped. He promises it will never happen again. But here lies the internal conflict that tears Sarah apart. She is wrestling with two conflicting realities. On one hand, this is the man she cares for, who is now begging for forgiveness. On the other hand, her primitive instinct for self-preservation is screaming. She feels violated, she feels angry, but mostly, she feels unsafe. The question haunting her isn't about the past, it's about the future. If his moral compass can drift that far when he is intoxicated, can she ever close her eyes around him again? Can she ever let her guard down? The apology fixes the silence in the room, but it does not fix the breach in the wall of trust. To understand why this situation is so destructive, we must look at the psychology of our consent and capacity. Consent is not merely the absence of a no, it is the presence of an enthusiastic yes. When a person is incapacitated by substances, they lose the legal and moral capacity to give that yes. This is an absolute line. Psychologically, Sarah is experiencing cognitive dissonance. She is trying to reconcile the image of Mark the protector with Mark the aggressor. The fact that her body responded physically adds a layer of shame, a common biological reaction that victims often mistake for consent. It is vital to state, a physiological reaction is not permission, it is merely biology. Furthermore, we must address the freaky good guy fallacy. Mark stopped. Mark apologized. In his mind, these actions might mitigate the offense, but the damage is not measured by the offender's guilt. It is measured by the victim's trauma. Trust is like a mirror. Once it is shattered, you can glue it back together, but you will always see the cracks in the reflection. The incident highlights a terrifying reality about intoxication. It reveals character. It strips away the social filters. If Mark's filtered self is respectful but his unfiltered self sees a vulnerable partner as an opportunity for gratification rather than protection, that is a fundamental character hazard. What can we learn from Sarah's harrowing experience? First, safety is the foundation of love. Passion is important, but safety is non-negotiable. If you cannot feel safe with your partner when you are at your most vulnerable, whether you are sick, asleep, or intoxicated, the relationship has lost its structural integrity. Second, listen to your body's alarm system. Sarah feels distraught and unsafe despite the apologies. That is her intuition functioning correctly. We are often taught to be polite, to accept apologies to keep the peace, but you should never silence your survival instinct to spare someone else's feelings. Finally, one violation is enough. We often look for patterns, waiting for a second or third strike before we leave. But some boundaries, once crossed, change the landscape forever. It is okay to forgive someone and still remove them from your life because they have proven they cannot be trusted with your safety. Recovering from a betrayal of bodily autonomy takes time. It requires re-establishing boundaries and often walking away from the source of the pain, no matter how much history is there.